So this is a story about grief. I have lung cancer, and the first template I looked at in tracing the emotional roots of my cancer was 5-element Chinese medicine. And in Chinese medicine, the lungs are about two things, grief and inspiration. So it begged the question, what have I not been grieving in my life? And I was very struck by the depth of my grief when I was diagnosed. It was seemingly relentless. I grieved and grieved and grieved for weeks. It was greater than my terror, which kept me awake at night for about 3 weeks every night. But the grief was just, it was a shocker. I found myself grieving my past and grieving my future. And grieving 1,000 little things I didn't even think were worthy of grief before I was diagnosed. I thought you just grieved when people died. And it struck me as well because my teacher Brad, who taught me how to be emotionally intelligent, he taught me how to pass through fear, he taught me how to let go of resentment, he taught me how to express rage in a healthy way. He taught me how to love, to really love and to really let people love me. So here I was with lung cancer. So my next step was to work with a kinesiologist. Now kinesiologists normally help you identify food intolerances and allergies. It's muscle testing effectively. But I use my kinesiology to help me identify points of trauma and grief in my life so that I could focus on those areas. I'm not going to go into the detail of all of that because I prefer to protect the people involved. And besides which, it's not about the people involved, it's about what I did with what I experienced, or what I didn't do with what I experienced. So just one example of that is I was a fully grown 5'6" double D menstruating woman when I was 10 years old. That was an extremely difficult period of my life that went on throughout my teens. I've done loads of therapy about that. But what I didn't do in therapy was grieve my childhood, which seemed to be abducted by premature womanhood way before I was ready. And the consequence of that played out for many, many years, including eating disorders that eventually did significant damage to my colon, left me severely dehydrated, and played a major, major part physically, at minimum, in my lung cancer, because it pushed all the toxins into my body. But that's another story. But even the physical part, notice that the eating disorder came from the emotional disorder in the first place. The same can be said of smoking. I smoked in my 20s. The same can be said of drugs, alcoholism, all the self-destructive things we do to ourselves, often when we're younger, all have emotional roots. So it's really important to get to grips with that. It's not just a question of eat better or stop smoking or stop drinking caffeine. It's like, how come you got into all that stuff in the first place? Because that is what your cancer is awakening you to. That is the whispering. That is the leaning in and going, what do you have for me here? What do you want to awaken me to? What is there for me to learn about my life that I need to reclaim, that I need to express, that I need to dance for joy about, that I never did? That's what cancer has to offer us. So that's what I've done. I've done a whole load of grieving this last year. A whole load. I've worked with a grief counsellor, and I'm so grateful because I've learned that grief is not a separating feeling like fear and anger. It's a connecting one. It's the cousin of love. We grieve that which we have loved or do love. And so when you feel it, it keeps love alive. It brings love back to life, like Lazarus. raised from the dead, and that's what it's done for me. In many ways, it's raised me from the dead, quite literally. So, my cancer has given me back my grief. And for that, I am truly, truly grateful.